Okay, we're going to talk about David Warner. I was going to say for the final time, but it probably won't be. He's announced that he's going to be in the commentary box in his second half of his cricketing career, but officially retired now from Test cricket, helping Australia to an 8-wicket win over Pakistan at the SCG and a 3-0 series win. Scored 57 in his final innings, hence his career with over 8,700 runs in 112 matches, 26 hundreds, not many of them overseas. Steve Smith has said that he's pretty keen to open the batting in his place. So that's David Warner, the cricketer. Jon Norman joins us to discuss David Warner, the man.
Where do you start? Do you know, guys? I'm going to miss David Warner, and the reason I'm going to miss David Warner is because when you invest in a sport, and this is why football works in our country to the in exactly the same way that county cricket doesn't work. Essentially, for a sport to really, really, really matter, you not only need to care about who's winning, you need to care equally about who's losing. And that's why football works. The drama isn't just about the winner, it's about the loser and the ramifications for that. And in county cricket, people just don't really care as much about the team that loses. They care as much about the team that wins, but the soap opera isn't quite there. The character isn't there. The tribalism isn't there. And the brainwashing hasn't been put in place for the last 100 years. So you're not brought up, unless you're from Yorkshire or Lancashire. It's just not really there in the same way. But it is there in the same way when it comes to the Ashes. And it is there when it comes to international cricket. And for me, the retirement of David Warner robs the game of the last true pantomime villain. When we grew up, every single nation, apart from New Zealand probably, had the villain. We all look back at the West Indies, right, as this great time. But boy, oh boy, they had so many villains. Viv Richards running down the wicket and getting Rob Bailey caught behind and ending his career. The West Indies fast bowlers bouncing our tail enders. They were villains. And it meant that when we beat them, it mattered and it meant so much more. And Australia has always had villains. Ricky Ponting, Matthew Hayden, Glenn McGrath, and David Warner. And now David Warner's gone, I'm going to ask you this question. Now everybody seems to get on so well. Everybody plays in the IPL or these T20 tournaments. It's big smiles all round, guard of honour. Everybody, celebrating Christmas together, it seems. Where have the villains gone? When you look around the world game and when you see England going up against them, when you're celebrating England's successes, where are the people that you're equally celebrating them losing in the way that we used to with David Warner? And I can't think of any.
Harmy, before you answer, I just want to say I know of at least 3 cricketers who now make their living post retirement from giving talks about just how nasty David Warner was for years and years. And the first thing that crosses my mind, John, when you refer to pantomime villains, is that they're funny and they're largely harmless. And what I also learned through the course of the last, 5 or 6 years is that he was put up to it by other players who said, "Yeah, go for it." They referred to him as the attack dog, and I know that time heals everything, but I think it'll take a few years for quite a lot of people who played against David Warner to even think of him as a pantomime villain.
I I hear where you're coming from. I think that the David Warner attack dog was especially evident against South Africa. But you know what? Shane Warne, Daryl Cullinan, we don't. That was pretty intense out there, wasn't it? There's been a lot of back and forth between South Africa and Australia over the years. One of my favourite stories is about Brian McMillan borrowing a Kalashnikov and kicking down a door and pretending to run into the Australian dressing room and shoot them all. look, I'm not defending David Warner. Um, I think it's true to say that we watch a lot of cricket, and at times we don't dial it in, but we struggle to care quite as much as as we should, and that comes with just watching a lot of the sport. But I always said to myself, the moment that I don't celebrate David Warner's wicket with that kind of feeling that I used to celebrate wickets when I was a child watching cricket, that was a day for me to pack it in. And I never reached that moment. Him, the villain, whether there was humour to it, pantomime aspect to it, or he was just down and out wrong 'un, he still symbolised that person. And without that kind of person on the opposition team, I think cricket as a whole is a poorer spectacle.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but from a player's point of view, I always looked at it and thought, you know what, it's just background noise. It really is background noise. When somebody was having a go, look, I was fortunate to be a fast bowler who not many people would try. I'm sure David Warner would try, and there's times when paths crossed a little bit at the start of his career when he came to Durham for that short period of time. And I agree, pantomime villain he is. Your question you asked, is there anybody else? I'd probably say there's only really one that I can think of who gets close to the line on numerous occasions. Yeah, and that's Virat Kohli, who have got any stature in the game, who you think, you know what, you celebrate what you're talking about, celebrating his wicket. I don't think he's venomous, anywhere near as venomous as what Davey Warner is. I probably would have quite enjoyed playing against David Warner because if he did come at you, and I'm sure he would consistently would come at you, you'd enjoy getting a time where the ball's flying about and it's going over his head, and they're the times you enjoy. You're having like Shane Warne coming at like some of your teammates, and then you get Warney down your end when you're bowling. You're not just bowling; you're bowling for your whole team to have a go at. The great man, because he's put one over on Paul Collingwood, or he's had a go at Ian Bell, or he's tried to get into the mind of Strauss or Trescothick. So when Warney comes out to bat, he knew more than nearly on every occasion that there was an opposition at a fast bowler. That fast bowler was bowling for his batting unit because of the way that Shane would behave with when he was bowling and talking about the mind games and everything that come with it. But for me, I just always thought it was background noise. I never got into a position where it got close to the line, or I felt as though I need to sort of get at somebody for what he said to me. I'm sure people watching the game loved the fact that these characters made the game so special for their watching purpose. But actually in the game, when you're in the game, there's one or two times I've been at. I've in my big mate Andrew Flintoff. There's quite a few times when we played, especially a couple of times we played against South Africa where we had big partnerships. And you'd get Herschel Gibbs and you get one or two others having a go at us because I'm number 11. He's smashing it, and Herschel's keep going, and Fred would just turn around to him. Are you still talking? He would just come back with, are you still going? You're not sick of your own voice yet, and it's just not working. So but for me on the field, it's quite good. It's quite good humour. It's quite good. If it did step over the line, there are times where it does. Then somebody tends to stand up and says, "Tell somebody to belt up and shut up." But at the end of the day, I agree with you. I'm going to miss David Warner because I think I thought he was a special talent as a cricketer. We came into the Durham dressing room when he was 18 as a 2020 specialist. Nobody had him playing Test match cricket. And I'll never forget Jeff Cook. Never forget the great man Jeff Cook saying he will be a Test cricketer. And we're just looking at Jeff and going, "You're joking. He's a baseball player. He just stands there and slugs it, tries to slug it everywhere." And Jeff said straight from the start, he's got good technique. He's got good hands. And he watches the ball closely and he hits the ball hard. He said he will turn himself into a Test cricketer. And we just didn't believe him because at the time, David Warner came over to England off the back of a start of a T20 career, which people only probably really give him that was going to be his niche market, 2020, possibly a bit of 50 over. You'll never get away from what happened in South Africa. Unfortunately, that will always follow him. But as a cricketer, as an actual talent, I think he's been a wonderful servant for Australia, and something which has been good for the game, because everybody wants to hate him. And you know what? Them characters are normally better for the game because of the colourful nature that they are.
John, final word from you?
I think he's going to be an amazing TV pundit. I heard a fascinating little piece on the Big Bash a couple of days ago. Aaron Finch talking about what it was like to bat with David Warner at the top of the order. And he said that both he and David Warner were talkers, and essentially Warner wouldn't shut up. And not only was Warner constantly talking between deliveries about what the bowler was trying to do, how he was trying to combat that, he was also telling Aaron Finch what the bowler was trying to do to him to get him out and what he needed to do to counter. And Aaron Finch was like, haven't you got enough to deal with on your plate, just trying to score yourself without worrying about me? But for me, I think he has got an eye on the game that is going to be absolutely fascinating. What he will need to learn, and I don't think I think he's got a little bit of KP about him. KP seems to me he still wants people to like him. David Warner, I don't think he's going to bother with that. One of my favourite commentators was Tony Gregg. And Gregg used to delight in being the only person in that Australian TV commentary box that didn't want Australia to win. He loved it. And David Warner, whilst obviously isn't going to be wanting Australia to fail, isn't going to be worried about saying the wrong thing or upsetting the wrong person. He'll say it like it is. And I think he's got a terrific cricket brain. So, that's where I think he's going to go.
I agree.
Harmy, I'll give you the last word. All this speculation a couple of years ago that Warner would spill the beans and tell his version of Sandpaper Gate in his book once he'd retired. I hear that the offer of the television contract deal might be dependent on him not releasing that book.
That's why I can't see him coaching. I can't see him within the Australian cricket coaching setup.
No, I can't see him in the coaching setup, but I think he's going to be box office on the TV. Because if you go out your way to have a go at so many people and you do it the way he's done it, it tells you he thinks about who he's having a go at. He's thinking about what he's saying. I don't think it's just open his mouth and stupid things come out. I think he has got a clear and obvious plan on what he's saying to each and every individual that he's doing, because he's pulling apart their techniques, he's pulling apart their lives, trying to get inside them. I agree with John. I think Warner had a decent cricket brain, and I think he'd be box office on TV. KP does want to be liked. He always has done, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think Warner's going to be quite the same. So it'd be interesting to see who he sits next to on many, many occasions, because there might be a couple of them in the next 10 to 15 years in that commentary box. Because he's kept his mouth shut and not spilt the beans in the Sandpaper Gate, largely down to the fact that a couple of them might have to sit next to him for test matches and commentaries. So it'll be interesting. But I don't think you can get away from the fact, last word, his career was absolutely brilliant from a performance point of view, especially with the baggy green on.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.